23rd of April 1947, the SS Samtampa was on a voyage from Middlesbrough to Newport in Ballast.
When the ship came into the Bristol Channel, then it really hit storm force winds. It shouldn't have been over this side of the channel, but it just got blown right across the channel.
Samtampa rapidly drifted towards Nassau.
The ship was pushed by the wind. It tossed and turned, higher and higher, getting closer and closer to Scare Point.
At the golf club in Porthcawl, a man watched the huge ship being badly buffeted by the heavy sea. Unsure whether she was in difficulty, her masts carried signal flags, but the poor visibility made them impossible to read.
Two boys knocked on a farmhouse door to report the ship so dangerously close to shore.
Have both hooks down and hope to creep offshore, but doubtful.
Over in Mumbles, Mr. Kluge, the secretary of the lifeboats, got a phone call.
We've had a radio message. The SS Samtampa is in trouble. Prepare to send the lifeboat.
Rapidly, he made one telephone call after another to get the lifeboat launched. The lifeboat men were at home, having their tea. Did I hear a maroon, they each thought. A second maroon. I must go. A ship needs help. They ran outside, hurrying to the pier. A passing taxi picked up the coxswain, William Gammon, and 3 others.
Lifeboat men are volunteers. They risk their lives to save others. So in spite of the weather, William Gammon looked at the men standing there. Who should he choose to go and help that ship?
It was a wild night. The wind was howling. The waves were hammering. Knowing their skills, he pointed to the men he needed for the rescue. Grabbing their oilskins, clutching their life jackets, and praying to God, they climbed aboard, and the Edward Prince of Wales plunged down the slipway into the freezing, churning water. The men on land watched for a while, then wandered towards home.
Samtampa position 6119 345 west, bearing 210.
Two of the fathers of the lifeboat crew had waited at the station and were very surprised to see the boat returning. Why have they come back? I don't know.
They heard Coxswain Gammon's voice faintly shouting against a boisterous wind. Phone the Coast Guard station and find out where the wreck is. Dialing up, they shouted back, The wreck is at Rest Bay. Do they want us there? The coxswain called back. Yes, you are required there, answered the men from the station. Bravely the men turned the ship round, revved its engine, and headed out to sea again. And Mumbles settled down to wait.
SOS. The cables will not hold much longer. Please send assistance. Samtampa towards station. Starboard anchor carried away, now ashore. SOS, port anchor now parted. SOS, now aground, look for light. Now breaking up, moving through.
The Samtampa flipped onto the rocks. The stone carved the ship into 3 parts. All the 39 men of Samtampa's crew perished. So did the 8 lifeboat men from Mumbles. They had risked their lives, but their efforts had been useless. All the bodies were taken to a dome-shaped building at Rest Bay. The tar was cleaned off so they could be identified by the relatives who had come all the way from Middlesbrough. They must have felt really sad.
But next morning in Mumbles, the people woke to a beautiful day. They didn't know what had happened. Some houses didn't even know that the lifeboat had been launched, but in other houses, anxious families were waiting for their men.
They were puzzled. Why aren't they back? It's been so long. Awful thoughts started drifting into their heads. They started wondering. Then just as they started getting terrified, there was a knock at the door. Oh, thank goodness they're back! But they weren't. It was someone else.
He had to tell them what had happened. It was the worst day of those families' lives.
However, on the morning after the disaster, there were a crowd of people waiting to join the lifeboat crew.
It was raining on the day of the funeral. A tragic disaster needs tragic weather to go with it. Big crowds saw the coffins of the men who risked their lives with no success.
Their bodies were placed in graves where they could see their beloved lifeboat house and the place where they had died.
When you're taking part in something like that and you think, oh, so near and yet so far, and you couldn't do anything to help it. You know, it is a bad feeling, very bad. But when I say there was no survivors, a couple of days later, the salvage company came down to have a look to see what was involved in cutting the ship up for scrap, which was going down to the steelworks in Porthcawl. And they heard a noise, and they looked around and they found the ship's cat, which was still alive. So there was one survivor, no humans, but the ship's cat was alive, and they took it off with them and they gave it to one of the farmers. So probably that ship's cat, the descendants, are still alive and around by Scare somewhere.